I'm Janice Rael. I am the founder and vice president of the Delaware Valley chapter of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. And thank you for having me here at Congregation Beth, Tikvah. And thank you for the bagels and lox. I don't think I've had lox before. It was joked around at our table that you guys have been eating sushi for years. So I thought that was really cute. So the name of my talk is Your First Amendment Freedom, Separation of Church and State. And it's what we refer to as religious liberty. And right now, religious liberty is getting kind of an interesting spin from the religious right. They're trying to say that religious liberty means that when they run a business, they get to use their religious ideas to operate their business and go against employment law and other federal civil laws. So we have our own views on religious liberty that come from our founding fathers, that come from the Constitution, that come from Supreme Court decisions. So let me tell you first about the Delaware Valley chapter. Our goal is to educate the public about our constitutional right to separation of church and state. And we take action to stop church-state threats when they arise in our area. So we do this in a lot of different ways. We try to educate the public, talking to groups like yours. We hold panel discussions and debates. We have these in New Jersey, usually in the Camden or Cherry Hill area, or in Philadelphia is where most of our meetings take place, is in Philadelphia. We just started having casual discussion, informal group meetings in Glassboro, where I live, in Center City, Philadelphia, and we're going to try to bring them up to Camden County as well. We have more members in Camden and Burlington County than we do down where I live, which is on the border of New Jersey and Alabama. So that's where I live. And that's why I got involved in church-state separation. I have always been an activist. My mother was also an activist. My mother was an anti-abortion activist, and she wrote a lot of literature against abortion, and I helped her proofread it and send it off to the printers and help her read her galley proofs. And I could see the things she was saying weren't exactly 100% true. They were intended to frighten women away from making choices about their own lives. And when I got older, my mother and I became estranged. I started getting involved in abortion rights activism, and I found that my main enemy came from the religious right, in particular Catholic bishops, organizations, groups that felt that abortion was immoral, should be illegal, which to me, there's two ways you can think about abortion. There can be a safe, legal one, or an unsafe, illegal one. Roe versus Wade didn't start abortions. Women had abortions before Roe versus Wade and died from them. Now, after abortion was legalized in our country, women don't die from these procedures anymore. So after I did some after I did abortion rights activism, I was doing clinic defense, escorting. I got involved in an AIDS awareness group, and again found that my enemy in fighting AIDS was the religious right. At the time in Philadelphia, the services for people in need, for people who, Catholic Social Services ran pretty much everything in Philadelphia. And they, back in the early 90s, they wouldn't treat people with HIV and AIDS. And my friends and I wound up protesting outside the Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul. Cardinal Bevilacqua just passed away this week, and I remember 20 years ago, being a much more aggressive activist and much more young and impudent. Our form of protest against then Archbishop, he was, I guess, the Archbishop at the time, we were throwing condoms at him to try to educate him about AIDS awareness. And my grandmother called me and said, "Janice, I saw you on the new news throwing condoms at the bishop." And I said, "Yes, Grammy, that was me." So that kind of aggressive activism paved the way for more moderate groups to come in and have discussions and make things happen for the population in Philadelphia that needed to be served. And eventually Catholic Social Services did start serving people with HIV and AIDS. And there were other groups in Philadelphia that served this community, and several years later, with the advent of the faith-based funding initiative that was started by President Bush several years ago, secular organizations that serve people with HIV and AIDS lost their funding. It was given to religious organizations, and the religious organizations had a different way of treating these patients. They were praying for them, laying hands on them, trying to get them to stop being immoral gay people and start turning to the Lord to, I guess, cope with having HIV and AIDS. I got this report from a social service worker who was fired, whose patients called him and said, all I wanted was medical equipment. I just needed some medical equipment, and they laid their hands on me and prayed, and that was all I got. So as an activist with Americans United, one of the things we do is kind of fight against faith-based funding and other programs like that. DVAU, Delaware Valley Americans United, we have a website, dvau.org. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. That's where this video will go. And that's why I have carpal tunnel syndrome, because I get to run the Facebook and the website and the YouTube. So we also do outreach at community events. We do tabling. I like to table the gay pride events. We feel that LGBT issues fall under the church-state umbrella as well. As Steve said, the marriage equality issue has been a big one in New Jersey. We've been getting lots of reports, and also the videos I've seen, the news reports I've seen about the marriage equality debates. The arguments against equality are religious arguments. And it's very unfortunate because if marriage equality is passed in New Jersey, no religious group will be obligated to perform a wedding ceremony for any couple that doesn't want to marry. It's up to the individual church, synagogue, the individual religious community to decide if they're going to perform a wedding ceremony or not. And that's the point we're trying to make. And again, we found we had this common enemy with the religious right. So as I got older, I left behind all that kind of aggressive activism, the marching in the streets, that kind of thing, and I got involved with Americans United and learned that there's so many different issues that fall under the church-state umbrella. Another issue that was recently something we tackled, excuse me, a year ago in New Jersey was school vouchers. Our group, Americans United, opposes school vouchers because they would finance religious education. 80 to 85% of all private schools are religious in nature. And if the taxpayers are required to pay for a religious education, that's a violation of our First Amendment freedom of religious separation between church and state. It is, the New Jersey State Constitution actually says no religious education gets a public dollar. And so we were concerned that even though the church-state argument against school vouchers isn't the strongest argument, you know, strengthening public education is the strongest argument against vouchers, but we still have like the sticking point argument that ultimately it's unconstitutional for taxpayers to have to pay for religious education. So I guess most of you are familiar with the First Amendment to the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech or of the press, the right of people to peacefully assemble, petition Congress for redress of grievances. But the very first words in our First Amendment is that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That's what our founding fathers felt was the most important thing they could put in the Bill of Rights. The number one right, out of more important than free speech, more important than freedom of the press, was freedom of religion. That was a freedom for different groups to practice the religion of their choice without being persecuted by the majority religion, without being interfered with by the government. And that's why we feel that our First Amendment freedom, separation of church and state, is most important. Now, you may hear people say that church-state separation is not in the Constitution. I mean, you guys have heard this. There is no separation of church and state in the Constitution. That's not true. That's the actual language of the day. When they said, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, they meant church and state should be separate. And we know this because of a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And Thomas Jefferson, as you know, was our country's third president. He authored the Declaration of Independence. He's one of the framers of the Constitution. He actually sat down and wrote a letter that many of you may have heard of. It's the 1802 letter to the Danbury Baptists. in which Jefferson said what it means, what the First Amendment means. It is intended to build a wall of separation between church and state. And in 1809, he wrote another letter about it, that no provision in our Constitution ought to be dearer to man than that which protects the rights of conscience against the enterprises of civil authority. That was a letter to the Methodist Episcopal Church. So we have a bunch of Founding Father quotes on Americans United's website, which is au.org. I'm not going to read them all to you. But the concept of separation of church and state is what this nation was founded on, without using those particular words. And there's other, when you hear this old chestnut, oh, it's not in the Constitution, we know it is. There's other things that are not in the Constitution. You would say you expect a jury, a trial by jury of your peers. Okay, well, jury of your peers is also not in the Constitution. You do get a trial by jury, but it doesn't actually say your peers. We take that for granted through the way that the Constitution has been interpreted by the Supreme Court through the years. The same with the right to privacy. It doesn't exactly come out and say in the Constitution that we have a right to privacy. It's how the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution throughout the years. And they refer back to the writings of our Founding Fathers, and that's where we get the phrase separation of church and state. That's where we get some of these concepts from. So, as I was saying, the term religious liberty is getting this kind of PR twist from the religious right. They want to have you guys pay for their ministries. It's not enough for them to have giant mega churches. It's not enough for them to be the majority religion. They also want the government to prop up and support their religion. A lot of religious beliefs don't go for that. In Americans United, we have people from every faith tradition, and none at all. We have Baptists who came up, ever since Jefferson's letter, the Baptists have been very concerned about separation of church and state. It's part of their theology. It's part of how Baptists relate to the government. They believe in a very strong separation between religion and government. And now we have religious right groups who want to have an evangelical Christian view of how the government should operate. And they're twisting the meaning of the words religious liberty to suit their own purposes. For us, religious liberty means the government's not leading you in prayer. The government's not telling you that this year is the year of the Bible and you have to read the Bible, and that includes the New Testament. That's what they're doing in Pennsylvania right now. We have issued a statement against that and are working on having it's a Pennsylvania bill, H.R. 535. It was a non-binding resolution. They declared 2012 the year of the Bible. They described it as being a non-controversial resolution, and didn't think anybody was really going to mind or notice that 2012 was the year of the Bible. And a lot of people do mind and did notice. One Pennsylvania representative, Cohen, decided to put forth a measure to have this bill repealed. Yes?
I'd like to just note that Mark Cohen is Judy Minch's brother.
Oh, really? So you have a personal connection.
I actually wrote him a letter on Thursday about this.
Really? Oh, that's wonderful. We're trying to get in touch with him ourselves. We've written to him, haven't heard back from him yet.
Okay.
So I'm sure he's very busy trying to tackle this issue. There was a petition that went out that over 15,000 people signed, saying that the government shouldn't be telling people that it's the year of the Bible. That's the responsibility of churches and religious organizations. That is to tell someone what religious documents you should be reading and when. And I understand for Judaism, it's very important that you don't be told what documents to read.
Not to co-opt your wonderful presentation, but I asked him if he would suggest that we go back to polygamy, since Abraham and Jacob had more than one wife in the Bible, and whether or not we are then asking the entire country to return to Saturday as Sabbath and to stone those who don't observe it.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is clearly a biblical value.
And we can't wear mixed fabrics either. So
We can't mix wool and cotton.
that's okay. So yeah, so just imagine if the majority faith gets to impose their will on everyone. And as Steve said, you know, the prayer that was held before the marriage equality hearing was a Christian prayer. In the city of Philadelphia, city council opens up every day with a prayer, and it's usually given in Jesus' name. And these issues are very hard to fight. Americans United is a national organization, but we are kind of small in comparison to our allies, say the ACLU, which is a very big group. We love to work with them side by side on certain issues. We don't have the resources to fight every single issue that comes up our way. We're trying very hard, though. And we're trying to win people's hearts and minds and help them to understand that it's your First Amendment freedom. It's the most important thing about being an American, is that you have freedom of religious conscience, that you do not have the government telling you that the first Thursday in May is the day to pray, and by the way, you have to pray to Jesus. And the groups that organize the National Day of Prayer have managed to get the governors of all 50 states to issue proclamations declaring the first Thursday in May the National Day of Prayer. That's very nice, but the group who runs the National Day of Prayer excludes non-evangelical Christians from their organization. They do not include Jewish groups. They do not include Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Wiccans. They don't include anyone else except the groups that follow their particular version of Christianity. And that's another issue. There has been a reaction to the National Day of Prayer. They call it the National Day of Reason. That's, I think that's more of an atheist protest, and Americans United doesn't quite get involved in that. But we still object to governors telling us when and how to pray. That's not the job of the governor. That is the job of a rabbi or a minister or a priest to lead us in prayer and to tell us exactly how we should be praying. That's not the government's job. So Americans United has the opportunity, since they're down in Washington, D.C., we get to be involved in church-state cases. Back in October, there was a House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution. And during that subcommittee meeting, the religious right acted like they were under attack. They said that it was Representative Trent Franks of Arizona declared that the separation of church and state is trampling religious freedom underfoot. So the people who were there were focused on the family, the Catholic bishops, several evangelical Christian groups. They tried to say that their religious liberty was being threatened. A lot of people's religious liberty is being threatened, but we don't really think it's theirs. They're kind of in the majority right now. We have a faith statement on our nation's currency. There's an oath to a deity in our nation's pledge. There's different versions of the Ten Commandments from the Bible displayed on government property, and that doesn't really look like Christianity is being repressed by the government to us. That it really looks like there's too much entanglement between religion and government. And when the government is involved in religion, you lose your freedom of conscience. If you're obligated to pay for someone else's ministry, you're obligated to pay for someone else's religious education, you lose your own freedom of conscience. It has to be up to you. It has to be up to the individual. That's how our nation was founded. That's what the Founding Fathers wanted, and that's how the Supreme Court has interpreted it throughout the years. So now we have a new makeup on the Supreme Court. We recently, a couple years ago, there was a case, the Hine versus FFRF, which is the Freedom from Religion Foundation, where the FFRF tried to sue, saying that they wanted to be able to take church-state cases to court and kind of like on a class basis, so that people could sue as a class. And in that decision, the court ruled that groups like the FFRF don't have legal standing to sue. And that really put the kibosh on a lot of church-state cases where people thought they might, we can't protest against the prayer in the Philadelphia City Council because none of us, I don't have legal standing, I don't live in Philadelphia, I don't even have to go to the City Council chambers. I don't have legal standing to file a lawsuit to say, hey, I shouldn't have to listen to prayer to Jesus Christ every morning before I show up here to be a City Council person. So the legal standing issue, that's one I wish I was more educated on the standing issue itself, but I understand that it's thwarting a lot of cases that might otherwise come to light. There are other cases that get won, or there are situations where Americans United and our allied groups have victories. You may have heard of a teacher in North Jersey, in Kearney, New Jersey, who was telling his students that evolution was not real, creationism was, and intelligent design was the only way to explain our origins. And a student in the classroom recorded this teacher saying these things. The teacher tried to deny saying any of these things, and the student, Matthew LeClaire, took out his tape recorder, hit play, and you could hear this teacher saying all of these things in a very, very Jesus-y way. And he was very extremely religious in a way that a public school teacher should not be. So that's a situation that without the vigilance of this one student, Matthew LeClaire, who took the time to not only record and document what this teacher is saying, but to report it and to follow through and stand up for his rights. That was the only way this teacher was able to be stopped. And from what we've heard, he's still doing it. He's just being a little more secretive about it now. So what we need from people like you is to also stand up for your First Amendment freedoms. If you feel that your religious liberties are being threatened, you feel that when you go to a public meeting and they open the meeting with a prayer and it's not a prayer you would normally say, your religious liberty is being threatened, and maybe we should have a government meeting without any prayer at all. And we need people like you to report those things to us. That's one of the things I do with Americans United. We take reports from all over the area about potential church-state violations. I was joking with Steve earlier today. I got a report from someone and I sent it down to Americans United. They said, oh, we need this information. I sent it back. I said, okay, this is the information we need to find out if this is really a church-state violation. And I was informed that the person was somewhat conservative. And I was thinking, it doesn't matter if the person is conservative or liberal. Church-state separation is the same for everyone. Okay? It's your First Amendment freedom. It covers everybody. It doesn't matter what you believe or what you don't. It doesn't matter if you're very devout, a little bit devout, or not devout at all. Church-state separation is what keeps the government from infringing on your freedoms and keeps your religious rights your own. Okay, so now I'm just going rambling here. I did bring some literature from Americans United. You're welcome to, we have a whole bunch of it over there. Those are kind of our talking points when we're discussing with our elected officials how we feel about certain issues. You're welcome to take a couple of them if you want to hand them out to your elected officials. We debunk church-state myths, like, is America a Christian nation? You'll notice the Constitution doesn't mention Christianity anywhere. The Constitution doesn't mention Jesus anywhere. So, people try to say our nation was founded on Christian principles. They say that a Christian principle is that Jesus was the Son of God and he died and resurrected and went to heaven for people's sins. That's a Christian principle. That's not part of our Constitution. The idea of thou shalt not kill, that's a moral principle that has been true for every society as long as we have recorded history. No one faith can say that they invented thou shalt not kill or do not cause harm to others. The golden rule is a worldwide concept of do unto others as you wish others would do unto you. So now, does anybody have any questions for me while I'm sitting here rambling? Yes.
What do you do about the two words in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Well, he asked about the Pledge of Allegiance, where we get to put our hands over our hearts and say that we're pledging to one nation under God. Those words were added to the pledge in the 1950s to show the communists how terrible they were and how great we were because we believed in God and the communists didn't. Right now, due to the political climate in our country, we don't have the support for having that kind of language removed. Yes, Steve?
I just read that in Massachusetts there is an initiative, at least at the state level, to remove those words from the pledge.
In Massachusetts? Wow. That's really interesting. So Steve just said that in Massachusetts they want to try to have the pledge changed to remove the faith statement of one nation under God.
Yeah, the Romney's lingering influence.
That's a big issue. The AU wishes that we could have kind of a sea change in public thought where the majority of Americans say, hey, you know what, this isn't right. Not everyone is under God. Some people are, other people have a different God, other people have many gods, and other people don't want to make a show of their faith. They want to keep their faith private to themselves, and they don't need to say it in school every day. Let me get him and then I'll get you. Yes?
It may come as a surprise to most of my friends here, but I'm actually a paying member of the Americans United.
Oh, thank
That's a
you.
surprise.
Isn't that a surprise?
And you're a Republican.
And I'm a Republican too.
We have Republicans.
As a matter of fact,
Everybody should have a cup.
anybody who truly subscribes to the Constitution should be a paid member of the Americans
Oh,
United.
thank you.
I got involved because a former friend of mine, I should say, was bemoaning the fact that the high school where he lived was no longer going to hold their high school graduation in a mega church because, you know, that those, I forget the words he used, but those rotten people from Washington came down and interfered in local politics and local policies. And he and I got into a very heated back and forth for quite a long time. As soon as I started hearing about it, I joined.
Thank you.
And they did win in Cherokee County, Georgia.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it was amazing that this is a church that on their website was very clear that their mission was to proselytize and that they were to bring people into their fold. And my major component was, besides the fact that maybe could cover up the crosses and everything else, their whole reason for being is to bring the rest of us to their beliefs. The absolute worst place for to hold a public high school graduation.
Yeah. That is, so Americans United does oppose
And
holding.
there's cost involved too, by the
Yeah.
way, which there was no cost that they'd done at the high school football stadium or something, you know, that was another issue besides.
Yeah, we do oppose holding public events such as school graduations that have a captive audience in a religious building that where some people may feel uncomfortable seeing a large cross on the wall, or it's.
This guy just couldn't see how somebody who was a non-believer, so to speak, could feel uncomfortable in that place.
Yeah.
And it was all about, what about our rights? Just no understanding. Typical evangelical Christian has absolutely no concept of why the Constitution was written the way it was and what it was designed to do. They forgot that people came here fleeing the Church of England and wanted religious freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't get it.
Yeah. And you mentioned being an Americans United member. I did bring some membership brochures with the other literature there, and also some copies of our magazine, Church and State Magazine. Americans United is the only national group that does just church-state separation and nothing else. As I said earlier, it covers a lot of issues: women's rights, public education, LGBT rights. And we publish this in our magazine, Church and State Magazine. So if you join AU, you do get a copy of the magazine every month. And it's very informative. It keeps you up to date on all the church-state issues taking place nationwide. And so I appreciate you mentioning that. You had a question in the front here?
Just more of an observation of sometimes sort of the subliminal language that's used to placate people who might be vocal against what folks are doing. We'll talk about a Christian country and Christian values. A lot of times I hear it a Judeo-Christian country.
And how does that make you feel?
As if they include my heritage too, then suddenly religion and state will be okay.
It's so much maybe shenanigans to try to include, you know, to say Judeo-Christian and say, hey, this is the majority, this is how it should be. I mean, America is flourishing with other religions. Muslims are growing in population, and Islam is on the rise in the United States as well as worldwide. And it's interesting to me, people on the religious right don't ever think of what would happen if they weren't the majority. What if another religion was the majority and told them what to think and what to put on the money? Oh, well, we want to say one nation under Allah, and you know, I mean, they don't see that could actually happen. You know, I mean, the whole purpose of our constitutional rights is to protect the minority from the tyranny of the majority. That's why we have rights. You know, that's why we have First Amendment freedom. That's why we have our, I'm losing my train of thought here. You know, you need to have that kind of protection. It's harder for minorities to stand up. We know there are lots of public schools in the area where the teachers are perhaps anti-evolution, which is anti-science. The teachers want to inject their own religious values into public education classes, and the students they'll report it to us, but they don't want to be the ones to stand up and speak out against it. And it's very hard in the community. When I founded the chapter in 2003, there were some issues in our local public schools that had to do with church-state separation. And I had intended to get heavily involved in these issues in defense of my children. And my husband did not agree with me on doing that. He was concerned that we lived in such a small town it would be dangerous. So I did get in the newspaper, and it was mentioned in the newspaper that I was not religious, and people stopped letting their kids play at our house. People stopped talking to me just because I have a minority religious viewpoint that is not shared by most of the people in our town. So you know, so it is hard, I think, to be that kind of defender. So that's why I try to do what I can with Americans United. So you had a question there?
Just observation. I grew up with a large number of Southern Baptists, and I don't know so much about it since they got hijacked 20 years ago, but before that, they were against the state being involved with religion because these people were never accused of being leftist. Because they didn't want the state interfering with their right to go convert us and do everything else. So they're coming at it from the other side.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it is not just a liberal thing.
Yeah, the separation of church and state protects both the church and the state. It gives you your religious autonomy. You know, when a program is funded by the taxpayers, eventually the taxpayers demand accountability. So if a religious organization accepts public funding, there may come a time where the government steps in and says, okay, we're going to tell you how to spend these dollars, and we're going to tell you exactly what you have to do with this money. You don't have a choice, it's taxpayer money. We're going to let you know what you can do with this taxpayer money. So in order for religious groups to maintain their own autonomy and to be self-sufficient, that we feel that it's not good for the groups to take taxpayer dollars. You know, Ben Franklin said it, that he felt that when a church was successful, it would support itself. I don't have that exact quote written down, but that's also on AU's website. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes?
You mentioned before working with other groups around the country. What about People for the American Way?
I love People for the American Way. They are allies with us. Whenever there's some kind of big lawsuit taking place, some kind of national thing, we're on the same side as People for the American Way. We have worked side by side with them, with the Interfaith Alliance. A couple of years ago, we actually, Americans United and the Interfaith Alliance put together a program about our First Amendment freedoms. It's called First Freedom First. And it discussed, you know, no religious discrimination, you know, women's rights, women deserve equal reproductive rights, that sort of thing. So groups like People for the American Way are definitely our allies.
Is there a lot of overlap in the areas that you guys cover?
I think there is. I think there is. But they are a much bigger group that they focus on broader constitutional First Amendment issues that include free speech, that include the other things that Americans United focuses just on separation of church and state, and that keeps our focus very narrow. For example, I was mentioned earlier, we got involved in the voucher debates here in New Jersey when school vouchers were on the table. School vouchers are kind of in the back burner right now, and the way the current government is running, they want to attack public education in another way by promoting private schools, charter schools. That's something that's right outside of what Americans United deals with. So we don't have an opinion on charter schools. We stop where the religion starts. You know, that's where we say, okay, this is where we have to this is where we draw the line. So, but we do work with these other groups, and you know, and not just First Amendment groups, but also Planned Parenthood, NARAL groups like that support women's rights. You know, we have allies on so many different issues that it's, you know, we're very lucky. We'll file amicus briefs in the courts to show our support in Americans United's viewpoint on these same issues that these other groups are fighting for. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for having me.